Ever since the series came out in the year 2000, I've been seeing plenty of fans rave about Jet Set Radio. It was the game that perfectly defined that generation in so many ways, from the music to the skating and especially the outfits. It just oozes with this feeling of X Games, rocket power, and old school MTV. You know, back when it was all Jackass and Rob and Big and all these other shows that were just cool. Now sadly, Sega hasn't done much with this series lately outside of putting Beat as a cameo character in the Sonic racing games and the mobile game Sega Heroes. Even recently, I've been seeing so many remixes of the iconic music, and it shows just how much fans are nostalgic about this classic series. And it sucks that Sega hasn't shown this series the respect it deserves for over 2 decades now, with Jet Set Radio Future being released in 2002. Now thankfully we did get confirmation of the next Jet Set Radio game being in development after a Game Awards 2023 announcement. But as of right now, it's not too clear about when we'll get a release date. And hey, it might have taken them 21 years to come out with a new game, but better late than never, I guess. But of course, to scratch that 21-year-old itch, indie devs had to take the concept of Jet Set Radio into their own hands. And as a result, they came out with games that work to evolve the genre. That's where the world of spiritual successors comes in, and where we get games like Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. Today we're here to look at this high-octane callback to the 2000s, and see why it may just be the best spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio. Just looking at it, you can already see the heavy similarities, so it raised a few questions that we'll have to answer for ourselves. Could this be Team Reptile paying major respect to the original series? Or could this be too stuck in the past for its own good? We'll dig into this later and talk about another spiritual successor that turns out to be better in a few ways, but not so great in others. Then later we'll take a look at some of the fan reactions to the next Jet Set Radio game, because there's a shocking amount of hate for it already. But before that, let's get back into who the Bomb Rush crew really is. We start off in the beautiful city of New Amsterdam, a place with unique structures just begging to be grinded. This place is filled to the brim with gangs of graffiti artists on wheels, otherwise known as writers. Their main goal is to take part in battles against other gangs until one of them is crowned as being All City, which basically means that they dominate the streets. We start off in a jail cell playing as a character named Foe. But don't get too attached to that name, since you'll only call him that for about the first 10 minutes. A jailbreak happens where we meet Trice, an interesting dude who gets us started off on our journey. And during this jailbreak, all hell breaks loose and we get introduced to some characters from an enemy gang of writers. After a short struggle, a tragedy occurs that leads to Foe literally losing his head. We later wake up with the name Red, along with a shiny new robot head to call our own. And I gotta say, it looks a bit bulky for us to be riding all around the city with, but at least it looks aerodynamic. Before you know it, we end up as a new recruit of a gang called the Bomb Rush crew. On the crew, we start off with 2 important members, but along the way we get a few more playable recruits with some very interesting styles. Again, we see the founder of the Bomb Rush crew, Trice. His main goal is to get his crew to become All City, and he'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. Then we have Belle, the second in command for the crew. She's not known for too much besides constantly being on her phone. And of course, if you've paid any attention to social media, then you know that she's the one character that you'll never have a tough time finding fan art for. We get to meet a few other quirky members later on, and even get the chance to recruit and play as some NPCs. They may not have a lot going on with the plot, but I appreciate the designs. With the main focus here being to fight against enemy crews, we get to see a lot of them all with their own themes. Like the Franks being a bunch of dudes stitched together with different body parts, just like Frankenstein. Or Eclipse being a group of all women who focus on astrology while seeking some kind of celestial alignment. The best part about each of these gangs has to be their graffiti tags. Even though the goal is to cover them up with your own, I gotta admit they do look pretty good. Some crews are very crucial to the plot and add a decent amount of depth to the world building. So it's not like we're just going up against some random weirdos who have no purpose. But we can't just talk about the characters without discussing the choice of graphics. This is one area where I'm a little conflicted on how everything was designed. Compare this to any other game that dropped in 2023, and graphically you might see people put it up against something like the Lord of the Rings Gollum game. And I'm not saying I'm a graphic snob or anything, but not having more realistic or higher quality textures is a choice that's important here. It mimics that older Dreamcast style that Jet Set Radio is known for. It doesn't try too hard to step outside of that, and when you're targeting those fans specifically, I think that's a major win. It sucks to think that the sales of this could be impacted though, since so many people these days tend to put graphics over gameplay a lot of the time. But then again, with a game like Lethal Company also being a recent cult classic, it does go to show that for a very fun time, the graphics don't even matter that much. Although I do wish the loading times were a bit better, but I will say that they captured the loading times from the Dreamcast perfectly if that's what they were aiming for. Outside of the characters and the world itself, what makes Bomb Rush so great is the addition of music that calls back perfectly to what you expect from Jet Set Radio. The music is an absolute bop, but I can't really tell you that, so take a listen for yourself. I never knew I'd be jamming out so hard to a song that's just a single word on repeat, but here we are. Also, if you're playing this on PC, don't forget to check out some of the insane mods that are out there too. You can get a shot at playing as everyone from Goku to Peter Griffin and even Spider-Man. It's a crossover that rivals Fortnite with plenty of changes that you can add for new characters and also some gameplay features. I've even seen a multiplayer mod which opens up a crazy level of fun for the community to have for years on end. But sadly, I played this on the Switch, so I didn't get to touch those mods for myself. Either way, I think the core gameplay was solid even without being able to shred as Dante from Devil May Cry. Because when it comes to how Bomb Rush plays, it's very similar to what you'd expect from Jet Set. You start off having access to just a skateboard, but later on you'll have access to a bicycle and inline skates. All of these have unique animations and tricks without feeling way too different from one another. Later on, you get a choice of choosing any combination of these with whatever character you want, so you won't be limited to any one person. The biggest change in gameplay has to be the boost mechanic. Yeah, just like another famous Sega franchise, they added a feature that makes the flow of movement and doing tricks work so much better. One complaint that fans had about the Jet Set games is how it could be harder to land certain moves or to control yourself while in midair. So to completely change that issue, the boost mechanic is here for you to not only move faster, but to also correct yourself if you mess up a jump. And it's not totally perfect, but it definitely saved me a lot of headache on some of the more complicated trick sections. And speaking of tricks, that is a huge part of the gameplay here. In each of the game battles, the main point is to either copy your enemy's moves and show off your skill, or to rack up as many points as you can in a short amount of time. Copying the moves is really straightforward, but the parts where you do combos had me feeling a bit odd. Most of your standard tricks are linked to the face buttons and you can easily pull them off without a problem. But if you really want to get those points going, then you want your multiplier to be as high as you can get it. If you notice any grind rails around you, you'll see plenty of them have a curve on them. When you tilt the stick in the direction of that curve, you get 1 point on your multiplier. And that sounds pretty simple, right? Now, I'm not a master at these things like many others I've seen online pulling off some ridiculous tricks, but to me, those corners became a major focus for getting the highest scores. And I can't tell if that was entirely on purpose or not, but I had at least one gang battle where I just went in circles the entire time to win and hardly did much else. Because why go out of my way to do these insanely complex tricks when I could just make turns and get multipliers? But anyway, outside of those crew battles, you also have some run-ins with the cops from time to time. This is where the actual combat comes in and where you either have to run, spray paint, or fight your way through them. And as far as the fighting goes, there's not much of a reason for it to exist. Now, it's important when it comes to breaking free of the robots that can shoot chains at you, but against enemies it doesn't have much use. There's not much of an explanation about how your attacks work with one another, and it feels like you're just mashing buttons to make stuff happen. The most I can say I've done for a combo is do air attacks, but even that was weird. I tend to run away from the grunts most of the time since you normally only need to tag areas or fight one specific boss when the cops do show up. And even with those bosses, your spray paint is gonna do more against them than whatever attacks you can throw out. So I see where they were going with that, but I just don't think it was necessary to add in combat that much. While I was doing the research for this video, I came across a channel that covered yet another Jet Set Radio spiritual successor that came out in 2017. Go watch the original video from Astro Black because he made a lot of great points there that I won't go as deep into for this video, but that is definitely a great watch if you want more info on the topic. The game in question is called Hover: Revolt of Gamers, and on paper it sounds like something that will be much more popular than Bomb Rush Cyberfunk. First off, this has an online multiplayer mode where you can play with others around the world, you know, without modding. One thing gamers love is the option to play online, and this is something that not even the original Jet Set Radio games had to offer. And also, the graphics are updated in a way that Bomb Rush didn't even do themselves. Being placed in this futuristic city, seeing the neon lighting effects and the scale of the open world is something that looks so much closer to a modern game. So why is this game rarely talked about in the discussion of Jet Set Radio's spiritual successors? Why is Bomb Rush getting so much more attention than Hover despite it having features that are even better in places? The easiest answer is that although Hover is an evolution of the Jet Set Radio gameplay, it just doesn't have the same vibe. While Hover is a successor, you can't take a look at this and say, damn, that looks exactly like Jet Set. But with Bomb Rush, there's times where it will be hard to tell the two apart. My guess is that when the fans crave Jet Set Radio, what they want is a game that has the same aesthetics and core gameplay, but with some additions and enhancements that bring it up to speed with what modern gaming is. And that's exactly what Bomb Rush did. Sure, it's not a completely perfect package in every single way. There's still minor kinks that can be worked out with it, but what it delivers on is the feeling that Jet Set Radio fans have been craving for so very long. Having the same kind of graphics and some similar music while adding in that boost feature to create a much smoother experience. And that's where we get into the juicy hate that people are having towards the new Jet Set Radio game. Don't get me wrong, the hype for this game is crazy, and the 5 seconds of footage that dropped brought more hype than most other Game Awards announcements. But one key thing that fans are concerned about is how it seems to have lost its unique style while going for a more modern aesthetic. Personally, I didn't expect him to keep the same blocky polygon models from 20 years ago, especially seeing how other games that feature Beat even updated his model for the small cameos. But I have to admit that it's not dripping with the same kind of flair that the fans craved from the original and now Bomb Rush. It's something I had to throw in here because it's funny seeing the fans say they love the original so much that they would go to the lengths of saying that Bomb Rush might just end up being better than the newest game. I'm not too sure what to make of it, but if you guys have anything to add to that conversation, then feel free to give your opinions on it in the comments. Also, let me know your thoughts on Bomb Rush Cyberfunk and tell me if this is your idea of a good spiritual successor or not. Subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you all in the next video.